Look me in my eyes. The windows to the makings of me. I am not broken, I am in process, and I have full permission to be. So look at me. Long enough to bear the weight of these stories. Understand that seeing my humanity is my journey and your responsibility. I owe you nothing but my truth. And although this world simply owes me reciprocity, I have learned my lesson. Promises are made to be broken with one exception. I cannot compromise on my healing. Self-made vows have become my priority. Some call it selfish, I call it necessary. It would all make sense if you would simply look at me. As I stumble through my field of dreams and sojourner through my pain, my shoes muddied with disappointment, searching for hope as a resting place, I am an expert in sorrow. Survivor feels like a cape that I wear when I find the strength to be brave, when I find the strength to be free, when I find strength. I only beg that it is not eclipsed by indifference. I embrace it like water. I feel its essence, but if I could just hold on, maybe infinite possibilities will baptize me. Maybe I could be born again. Maybe death could pass me over and I can stand in the promised land. I have buried my truth for long enough. I have crossed my heart and hope to die, promising my soul that it would be safe from a world that has made no room for me. I am tired of being nothing but broken. I am tired of begging for grace and basic humanity. I am not a nuisance or a specimen to be studied. I am to be loved. I am to be protected. Empathy is the result of many souls walking alone together. Walk with me, and then maybe you will understand. Look at me, and then you will know that I am not my trauma. I am deserving of my name before a case ID. I am not proof that you are a good Samaritan. I am not a load off of your plate. I am not asking for saving. I am demanding respect and human dignity. I am worthy of at least that. I didn't ask to fight for my smile, but that battle makes me no less beautiful. I am simply scarred, and I am no less of a warrior because my scars are not like yours. I too have a purple heart. Holding my breath, waiting for someone that will see me for who I am, looking for a place where I am allowed to be in pain, but I am also allowed to stand with me in the gap. Be the bridge and let me walk over on my own. Fully supported, meaning I am never alone on this journey. Searching for a land of milk and honey, only to find shards of my reflection, telling me to keep going, reminding me that I am the promised land. The pilgrimage and the destination. The makings of me are in these eyes. The joy, the despair, the laughs, the cries. So look at me as I fight to reclaim my peace. As I teach myself that I am worthy, as I dress my wounds with purpose and give wings to these stories, as I breathe life into my destiny, I remind you that I am not a spectacle, but I refuse to be unseen.
Carrie Joy came to the Tennyson Center for Children. She spent time with children. She listened to their stories, and they spoke to her. And that is what created that tremendous poem that speaks to all of us and cuts through our souls. Carrie Joy asks us to walk with us, children who are moving through the child welfare system, and that is exactly what we're doing in our Stand in the Gap series. My name is Ned Breslin. I'm the CEO of the Tennyson Center for Children, and we are shedding light on an old problem and a sector that is a little unseen, that is a little hidden. We are going to bring to light not only the challenges that the sector is facing, but we're going to show you and shed light on the people and the organizations who are walking with children to a better future. Children who life circumstances have hurt, have experienced trauma, and who are coming out strong and bold on the other side. Now, there's only one way to start this conversation. We need to hear from the children who are now young adults who have journeyed through child welfare. We need to introduce you to an amazing group of young activists who are demanding not only to be seen, but to be heard.
I went through 22 different foster homes, so I was in there with the nitty-gritty. I was in there with the people. I've had to struggle with the separation of my little brother. The last time I seen him, he was 4 years old. My little brother is 15 now.
Some of my biggest fears that I remember were being confused about how I felt about my biological family and having a lot of dilemmas about if it was okay that I still loved my mom and wanted to be with my family.
Everyone else has read these things from a book. You haven't been in these shoes, you haven't been in these steps, you haven't been down this road. So if you haven't been down that road, how are you going to, say this is what's best?
So Project Foster Power is a youth-led youth organizing group that's bringing current and former foster youth together from across Colorado. The Burning Wall is the activity that we use to do listening and to hear about what problems and issues young people are facing and experiencing. And everybody spends a couple of minutes of writing one problem per sticky note. And then when they feel ready, plastering it all over the wall. Last year we talked to about 120 young people, and so there were hundreds of sticky notes all over the Burning Wall.
At first, when I would read the letters, it was kind of like an angry feeling that I get inside. I've heard these stories, and it's always a question of, why hasn't nobody else heard of these stories? Why isn't no one else around to hear these stories?
This really compelled me to be able to learn about what the power of collective voice and what organizing looks like from the ground up, and to be able to work to improve a system that is so flawed but has the right intentions.
The good thing is that, like, if you have somebody out there as a youth like us, to where, like, you can latch on, like, I got your back. If you need anything, you can call me from the group home. I'll come have lunch with you if you need that. I know that I needed it, so now that I can give it back, it just makes it's like more of therapy for myself too.
Project Foster Power. Oh my goodness. Brianna Lennon, Dominic Mallard, Janie Ann Finch. These people are changing the way that youth have emerged from the child welfare system, and they are fighting on behalf of those kids. You have behind you a Burning Wall, which is unleashed and kind of the talent and the voice of kids who've gone through this system. What have you heard?
A lot of the things that I've heard, I would have to say would number one be how the system has felt for the children themselves, meaning, when they were taken from their home, they were expecting, to be in a better place, wanted, very well taken care of, and so have you. And they're not feeling that. They're not feeling like, they're getting the necessary things that they need in their life. They're still kids, and, they've been through so much and have done so much, and they feel like they don't have anyone to talk to, anyone there, anyone that can help them when they do have a problem. There's no one to turn to. The people they had are gone, and now there's, new faces around. They just feel like they're not wanted in the situations that they're in.
I love that. You're basically taking complicated journeys, and you're taking the lessons of that, and then you're saying, let's transform these lessons back to the kids who are going to follow the same path that we've followed. What's the main thing that we should be thinking about? What do we need to change to smooth out and improve the journey that foster youth take coming forward?
Listening definitely is the key. That's the key to everything, especially for our adults. It's just to listen. We are youth. Yes, we are younger, and no, we don't have all the answers to everything in the world. But, when it comes to something that's going on in our life, the best thing that an adult can do for us is to listen, and take into account that we are a person. We are growing into an adult. So we have a mind. We have, enough knowledge. Listen to us.
I'd say, in all honesty, oppression. We mix with kids being in foster care as we did something good. We protected this child. We saved them from their family, but not knowing that sometimes a kid going into foster care does more damaging than the abuse and neglect that brought that child to social services in the first place. Because when you remove these children from their homes, from their current lifestyle, it doesn't matter if society sees it wrong. All that child knows is that, like, hold on, this is my family. Even though they're doing this, this is what love is. That's their definition. But when you do that and you place them into care and then you separate these siblings and everything, it drives This destroys them. That's why I even do what I do, is because I'm so strong on sibling connections, you guys. It's been 10 years since I even seen my little brother. 10 whole years, I don't even know if he's alive or dead. So I do this because it gives me comfort and relief knowing that I can prevent a child in the future from going 10 years without their sibling, you know?
Well, and I think taking what Bree and Domo are saying, we can connect that back to what we've been working on this whole year of youth voice, youth choice, and wanting to be able to encourage, especially the people who are working in this field and the adults who are doing their best to take care of us and have all of the right intentions, to remember that at the end of the day, this is our life. It's our whole experience that is being controlled, and that we need to be able to have a voice at the table. And even if that means that some of our ideas and our wants and what we think we need isn't practical or realistic, it means that it's your responsibility to ask us questions and to let us give you feedback, and then to explain to us why or why not something's happening.
What are the concrete things that you guys are starting to see that you are asking us to not only hear but to activate against?
Something that I think we would need is more youth. In order for us to continue working and striving to better the foster system, we need more youth. You know, we do have a member meeting coming up on November 10th, and we would really love to see, you know, any youth that's from 15 to 25 that's been in foster care, you know, or you know, have been a part of that, to actually come and show support.
You can find these guys through the Rocky Mountain Children's Law Center. Amazing organization that has housed you and is unleashing you. I really hope you find your brother. That touches me deeply. A little side story, I just found my sister. I'm 53 and she's 10 years older than I am. And it's actually amazing. I swear, I hope you don't take that long.
Oh, no.
Okay.
It makes me happy.
So, yeah. So, Bree, Domo, Janie Ann, I thank you so much. Please check out Project Foster Power, and these guys are going to change the world. I'm absolutely convinced. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right. You didn't know this was going to be a therapy session, did you?
A lot of these times these kiddos come with, you know, no prescription eyeglasses when they're needed, or they have hearing deficiencies. It's nice to know that we have the tools available and the resources available to get them up to date and, you know, get them to live somewhat of a normal life.
I mostly work with kids on the autism spectrum and with developmental disorders and delays. A lot of places that do the type of work that we do have closed, and Tennyson has done the best that they can to step up for these families and for these children.
I think there's just such a huge stigma about a lot of the kids that go here, or about the foster care system, or about child welfare in general. And once you break those down and get to be part of these kids' lives, like, I don't want to not be a part of their lives anymore.
We've formed this really great community of people who are willing to support each other and know what it's like to go through the grind, the joys and the challenges and the ups and downs, and to be able to come back the next day and say, okay, we're gonna do it again.
If I can acquire the skill, I'll be there to help, and I think that's how I've always been, and it's definitely showed here because there's so many different gaps in different areas, and being able to just learn a new skill and fill that gap is definitely very rewarding, I believe, for anybody.
My mother was actually in the foster care system. She lived in an orphanage as a young child. She lost her mother at a young age. In fact, I'm an adopted child. My mother chose to adopt 2 children as a result of her experiences in the system, and so I feel a real personal connection and interest in doing more for the organization here at Tennyson. When I told my mom about what I was doing here, she looked at me and smiled. This place just really warms your heart.
Welcome back to Stand in the Gap. Emily Perry, Dustin Delorio, these guys are clinicians, clinical supervisor, who are on the front line at Tennyson working with some of the kids that we were talking about and the kids we know and love.
My beloved client, Kyle, he really paints the picture of the impact of treatment at Tennyson and how we really adjusted our approach with him to stand in the gap. He was 5 years old when he was removed from his home, and he experienced every kind of abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, as did his mom when she was a child. So with this family, we're seeing trauma across generations, which is really impactful for the entire family system and for the community around them. He moved through various foster homes and psychiatric hospitalizations before he came to Tennyson. So by the time he came to us, he was very afraid. He didn't know what a safe adult meant. He didn't even really know what an adult was. He was malnourished. He wasn't toilet trained. So we had a real opportunity on our hands to not only teach him life skills, but to also teach him how to be in a relationship with people and how to have contact with the community around him. And he was our little Tennyson mayor. I mean, he's just the greatest.
I have a very soft spot for Kyle. We also have a tradition at Tennyson where we'll go out on special occasions, and he would always go and get chicken wings. And he's only like that big, and he would order like 80 chicken wings and 3 enormous large French fries, right? And he'd only eat about 5, right? And then he would collect them all, right? He would come back to campus, and he would put them on a trolley, and he would go and give 1 chicken wing and 1 French fry to every staff member and every kid that he could find. It was so sweet. And he was barely able to see over the trolley. So really sweet kid. So let's hold Kyle in our hearts a little bit. How normal is Kyle? Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, that is a lot of what we're seeing. And I'm glad that Emmy brought up the relationship stuff. I think that's because when we really talk about trauma, a lot of people think of PTSD. Someone experiences something traumatic, right? We talk about this with veterans all the time. But we're kind of talking about something a little different today, actually. We're talking about something we refer to as complex trauma, something repeated, ongoing traumatic events. So not only do we have kids that experience that, but then on top of that, they are learned behaviors from being around parents and adults who aren't safe, who handle emotions in really volatile ways. They learn really interesting ways to deal and cope with the world. And what happens is they become afraid of relationships. And one thing that we see a lot is that we really need those relationships in our lives to understand who we are, to understand what we're capable of becoming. So just like Kyle, a lot of our kids come in feeling really hopeless, like, who can I be? I'm scared of people, but I'm scared to be alone. And how do I get my needs met, and what am I supposed to do? There's no path for me. How am I supposed to move forward?
I think a lot of people think when a kid comes to a place like Tennyson, like we dive right into treatment and everything. But actually, the first move is to stabilize them. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think something that we saw with Kyle, and it goes back to the relationship piece, and his experiences with abuse and neglect were extremely traumatizing. And for him, something that I saw that was almost even more impactful was being removed from his caregiver. And moving throughout the system and having multiple placements and disrupted attachments and what that really does to his identity. So when he comes, the focus does have to be on stabilizing because he's just so disoriented and out of sorts, and he doesn't know who to trust and how to really be in his world. So just really kind of shrinking that world a little bit and really focusing on little things that we can do to show him that we're safe adults and that we believe in him and that we care about him unconditionally. I think that's huge.
Tennyson's tried to do a lot of really interesting things, but one of the things that I heard when I came to Tennyson, I've been there about 2 years, and when I talked to people like you, every single time what you said was, we love working with a kid like Kyle, but we are unsatisfied that we do this work and then we kind of push them off to somewhere else, and we just sort of hope. Why is that so problematic? Why is that in some ways just continuing the problem that we intervened on the first part?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue. I would say in residential programs throughout the United States, they're really struggling with that, trying to figure out the answer to this problem that, hey, our kids come into treatment, they get better, and then they go home or to a different placement, and things seem to erupt. One thing that us at Tennyson that we're really trying to strive for is how do we create independence versus dependency? How do we help kids not by simply having a relationship with them, although we see that as important? We have to teach them the skills that it takes to really be successful. We have to introduce them to the things that make them feel like they have worth in the world. Oh, I can be good at this thing. That gives me hope that I can have a life and accomplish things in the future. And that's something that I would say Tennyson will admit that we failed in the past, accomplishing these things. And we are extremely dedicated to finding a way to create independence for our kids so that when they leave, we can have confidence that they know what to do no matter what sort of support they have out there in the world. Although we'd love for them to have a bunch of support when they leave us too.
And I think too, if we don't follow them once they leave, it just adds to this sense that they're fragmented, that each placement that they've been in is a single placement rather than a fluid process where they feel like they can maintain relationships with people rather than, oh, that was just a part from my past. Because I think it all builds up to create that sense of identity, which is what we're really working on, is teaching them to be individuals and to really figure out who they are and not just what's happened to them or what people have told them that they are.
Yeah, one of the things I love is we've linked much more with like boys and girls clubs. We've gotten kids who are at Tennyson onto basketball teams. I went to this one basketball game about a year ago, and nobody knew this kid was a residential kid, right? They just thought he was just another kid in the high school. It's a huge high school. He played on the freshman basketball team. They were playing this team, and they should have gotten killed. I mean, they were 6 young boys against a team of like 3 3 different groups that came in, and they stayed in the game. One guy got hurt, another guy got hurt, so they were down to 4 guys. This kid from Tennyson, you can't make this up, but seriously, he stole the ball, passed it to another guy, made a basket, they won the game, and the bleachers cleared. And everyone's like hugging him and cheering, and I just saw this look on his face that he just was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm just a normal kid. And it was beautiful. I think a lot of times people think that the walls are just where we're working, but I think what we're trying to do is get outside of the walls so that they can actually engage with the world in a different way, learn new relationships. How did Kyle do that?
So he had an incredible mentor, and I think that was huge for him, someone who wasn't directly involved in Tennyson day to day, and he got to really teach Kyle community skills, which I think was important. How can he be out in the world? How can he go to Chick-fil-A, his favorite place in the world, or go to Target, or go to Boondocks, and how can he actually enjoy himself and feel safe with a secure adult? And also staying with him once he discharged, I think, was huge, and being a part of that journey with him, because I think, like you said, like the walls can kind of cave in a little bit, and it can be isolating. So having those connections to all different types of people and part of his team is really important.
So you mentioned we've followed him. So let's finish the story. Where's Kyle now?
So he has been embarking on the journey of getting adopted by an incredible family up north. And I have had the opportunity to visit with him and to consult with his treatment team, which I think is huge because it really aligns with Tennyson being his last stop in the child welfare system. And my favorite kind of part of the end of the story is the last time I visited him, I'm driving away, and I look in the rearview mirror, and he's checking the mail in the mailbox, and then he picks up a tennis ball and he throws it to the dog, and it was just everything that he deserved in one image. It was family and hope and healing and love, and it was like that closure that I needed, like, oh, okay, he's where he deserves to be and he's safe. And I think we see that, and we see that it can really work.
And we're building out a program, and I think it's really important. Kyle's just a little kid. He's going to be a different kid at 12. He's going to be a different kid at 15. He's going to be a different kid at 18. We and our allies in child welfare are trying to not have him come back to Tennyson. We don't want him ever back at Tennyson. I miss him dearly, but I don't want to ever see him again. I really don't, until maybe he's an adult. How can we build support that understands that even though he's processed this phase of his trauma, that things are going to come up down the road, that we don't have to yank him from his family. We have to support that family in a fundamentally different way.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that at Tennyson, we're trying to be those people that can be in the system and say, hey, things are going to happen. We're working with kids who've been through tremendous things in their life, who've learned really incredible ways of managing those things, things are going to come up. So what we need to do is we really just need to get the word out, and we need to be less reactive ourselves, right? Okay, there's a problem. We got this. This is what we do. We know what to do. We know how to help kids be independent, and one way is to help keep them in the home and support them where they can be most successful, where they can feel that they have a future.
I think we all want to see Kyle become a successful adult and really rock. He might join Project Foster Power. Dustin, Emmy, thank you so much for everything you do. You guys transform lives, and thank you for sharing with us today.
Great. Thank you.
I'm very proud to say I was a caseworker, and I think it helps to really put myself in that position over and over again. It is one of the hardest jobs I think I could ever imagine somebody doing. You're people who are human, who have emotions, working with other people who are human, have emotions. Everybody reacts to when something bad happens to a kid. We want to just be angry at that person. We want to take those kids away. We never want them to have access to anything about that kid anymore. It'll be safer for the kid, but that's not actually the truth. More often than not, it's parents who want to be good parents. They just don't know how to do it well, and they don't know that they're actually hurting their children. Tennyson is bringing this idea forward of where are the gaps in our system and how can we meet them, and it's not always out-of-home care that's what's needed. It's all the services we can wrap around a family to try to keep them intact. Can't always work, won't always be successful. There may be bumps, but that doesn't mean removal. That means what other services do they need to be successful? I think all of our caseworkers would say that's why we're here. If I was successful in reunifying a family, or if I was successful in keeping a family together and I saw some really positive change, I think they feel as much success as the family does in a lot of ways. And I think what we miss often is reinforcing with the families the successes they have had. Small successes, small achievements, keep going.
Thanks for coming back. I'm here with Mimi Scheuermann, who is the Director of Adult and Children's Services at Denver's Department of Human Services. What does that even mean?
I didn't expect you to lead with that question. What that means is that if there's a concern of abuse or neglect on children or an at-risk adult, we receive those calls and we determine the correct response, whatever that may be, to see how we can help or intervene depending on the need.
Yeah. It's a sector that's largely dominated by negative stories. Is that fair?
Very fair.
Let's level set with a positive story. There's a caseworker in Denver DHS who called us one day, and there was a girl who had experienced trauma, and she was kind of bouncing between her parents who had divorced and remarried. And one of the parents had pretty significant trauma herself. And so the daughter kept kind of running away whenever she was supposed to be with mom. And your caseworker called us and said, you know what? She really actually likes Tennyson. She's been there a couple times at the school and in our special services unit. Could you just take her for a while? Because we need to work with the mom. And she just needs some time. And so we took her for about 3 months, and she's a phenomenal kid. She's a phenomenal kid. But your team actually did amazing work to help that mom really start to process her trauma and start to move forward and begin to have a different kind of relationship with this daughter. And they actually live quite near me, so I see them quite often. And they're still together because you guys actually intervened appropriately. You didn't break up the family. You didn't take them away. You just said, I need a pause. That's an amazing story to me. That's you guys at your best. Is that fair?
That is an amazing story. That's a great story. And I don't get to hear those stories as often as the kids experience them, the folks that we work with on a regular basis, because I'm at a level where it's like if there's a problem, they come to me. And I have to figure out how we're going to do better. And those are the stories I want to hear more of. You know, our kids, we have a lot of focus on our kids, and they have a lot of trauma, and we have to work with them. And as some of our youth have said, like removing them from the home is not necessarily the best answer. We need to figure out how we can work with the family, and we need more focus on the parents and how we deal with their trauma. More often than not, they have just as much trauma, if not more, because they've had how many more years of life and not going well often. how do we focus on them as we're working with the children, but we can't just fix the kid and think it's all going to be better. Right. We need to focus on their entire circle of support and how they're going to be better there.
I have to tell you, that's why I love our partnership with you, because I think there are so many parents, we interact with so many parents who are trying so hard to transform their trauma and not transmit their trauma, and they know it. They know it. And I think one of the things that you guys do is you guys have been really clear, like you just said, it's not just the kid. It's that entire family unit, and we don't need to isolate them. We need to find ways to surround them. How does your team do that? Because your team is actually remarkable.
We have some great stories. We have always room to grow. Everybody has room to grow, but I think there's this need for everybody who's touching that family or that case, they need to come together more often and with the families and have more frank conversations about what is the real worry, what is really happening, and how do we approach it in a way that is meeting your needs and meeting the needs that we're worried about. I think a lot of times we fail to really be clear with people about why we're so worried and what the real challenges are, that even when we say we're going to give you this service and this other thing and we're going to work with you, half the time they don't even understand what it is they're supposed to be doing and what is the next step that their family can be back together. And so we need to have better, frank conversations early on in our involvement, hopefully before removal even has to be considered.
There's a new law, Family First Preservation Services Act, which is trying to turn the child welfare sector on its head. You have always inspired me because you seem to be ahead of that curve. You've been trying to reimagine child welfare for quite a while. Can you let us know just some basics of this law and why you're so excited about it?
Well, I can't own it as Denver County. I think the state of Colorado is way ahead of most
Colorado's
other
rocking
states.
It. Absolutely.
We have done amazing work up until now, and with this act coming forward, it's giving us a renewed sense of hope that we can really make some incredible changes. One of the main components of the act is that we can actually pay for services with federal dollars before we remove kids from their families, where right now Colorado, in their ultimate wisdom, already has dollars that is provided through state funds to be able to do this. Now the federal government is actually going to work with us to figure out how they can reimburse us for those services, which is what we need. We need to prevent out-of-home care. We need to find ways to get kids back in their home, and services are what it is. Paying for a system that pays for foster care is opposite of what we're trying to do. Removing kids from their home does not necessarily mean they're going to be safe. Unfortunately,
we just heard that.
We did. Removing kids from care is not necessarily always a safe alternative. So that's one major component. Another component is making sure that if we're putting kids in those really high levels of care, that we are actually considering what is the need of the child and do they actually need to be there. And it's not me making that decision, it's not you making that decision. It's an independent group that's really going to look at that and say, this kid really needs this level of intervention, and if they don't, it's on us to figure out how we're going to serve the kid and the family.
I love it because it's forcing a new relationship between us, which is overdue, and it's holding us accountable to better results. I think there are times, and you would agree, like Kyle, there are times where, or even the case that there are times where a smart, thoughtful, short removal might be necessary, but we have to hear what Project Foster Power and the youth are saying is that, I need to heal in my family. I need to find ways to stay together. I don't want to be separated from my brothers and sisters anymore. And I think what this law does is it empowers all of us and it asks hard questions about the impact of our work. So if we're going to take someone like Kyle out of the home for maybe a totally legitimate reason, what is the plan to get them back into that home or into a safe home and have it stick, not have this kid bouncing through the system 22 times like one of the Project Foster Power kids talked about. That is unacceptable.
Absolutely. And quite frankly, we need to make sure that when they're in those placements, we understand why they're there. Yep. Like you said, what is the goal to return this kid somewhere else? And if we can't return them to their home, where's their family? There's not a kid on this planet that doesn't have somebody else besides the caregiver. There are other people, not necessarily family, who else has impacted their lives in some way that they are willing to take these kids on. So we have to do much more work around that. Can't forget about dads. Dads have families too. Where are they? Where can we find them, and how can we get them more involved with what's happening? Whether they're just there for a connection or whether they're there for a permanent placement, Who knows? But we have to explore it and find out what we have. And we as adults can't always be the experts on the kids' lives.
We heard that.
We did hear that. We have to be comfortable with asking for what they need, being comfortable also saying no and why we're saying no. But at the same time, we have to have the courage to take risks with them. Because quite frankly, we as kids, we took risks. Our parents probably have gray hair because of what we've done. But that was a normal thing for kids to be doing. And when kids come into our system, we put this bubble around them. You can't do this. You can't go there. You can't do any of this stuff that a normal kid would do or experience. And one slight misstep means a complete catastrophe. And it can't be that way anymore.
It's actually on the burning wall. The burning wall, there's a lot of statements about too many rules, too many, I need to be free. All that kind of stuff is exactly right.
It's hard. As adults, we want to protect every kid that comes to us. We want to make sure that as a system, I'm not blamed for something that happens. Our foster parents, your facility folks, they worry. We're all going to be held accountable if something bad happens. It's like, well, bad things might happen or missteps might happen. How do we get to a place where we can all know what the risks are and see what happens?
Do me a favor. I think part of the Stand in the Gap initiative is to shed light on people like you who've dedicated your lives to this. Why do you do this?
This was asked me one other time too, and I don't even know how to answer that question. I think there are just these moments where the work that you do, and when you're presented with the situations, you just have this inner passion, fire to say, that's not right, that's not fair, there are other ways to do this. Why can't anybody see it the way I see it? And I've learned over my years that it's not always best to just say it that way. There are better ways to really get across what you're trying to communicate and what you're trying to change. And learning that these things take a lot of time. Changing people's minds, changing people's perspectives. We have everybody in the system who their goal is always the same. We're here to help kids. We want to make sure they're safe. But our decisions are not always the best ones to get us there, and it's too scary to do anything different. So it's really just having that passion to be able to talk about it and try to know that in the place of failure, there's always room for growth.
Yeah, your passion is infectious, and it's one of the reasons we love working with you. 5 years, what are we talking about?
Oh, gosh. I think my boss is here. I think what would really be great in 5 years is to have a system where we are all of us, the whole system, not just child welfare, not just Tennyson. We are a very large system that have lots of players. We are all on the same page with saying kids need to be in their home first and foremost. Yeah. What does that look like? And if there is like an emergent crisis where a kid is literally, or we think will be hurt in some way, shape, or form very soon, how do we get them in a really short-term place to give us the time we need to really wrap our heads around what this family actually looks like from all perspectives? Like the basic needs, how do we meet those first? How do we know what's really happening before we put kids in a place where we know that if I didn't figure out in 3 days, the kid's stuck for a while, because now we're in this place where we have to do so much more work and so many more people to answer to. It's like if we're all on the same page, all those same people can be there to advocate and do their role, but all of our goals are the exact same. We need this kid back in this home, and if it's not with this home, it's with somebody they know. If it's not with somebody they know, it's somebody they kind of have an acquaintance with, and if it's not that person, then it's that stranger care that we unfortunately have to rely on a lot.
It'll happen.
It'll
happen, but let's make it less.
Yes.
Is what I'm absolutely hearing. The caseworker story that we started with is absolutely unleashing that vision. Mm-hmm. She knew that it was right for this girl to be with her mom and dad. She just needed some time. And I just want to thank you so much. Denver DHS is a huge partner of ours. We learn from you every day. We're inspired by you every day. And we appreciate you holding us accountable to getting kids safely home. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so that's our first session of Stand in the Gap. We're going to be back in February, where we're going to be talking actually about mental health. Mental health and the child welfare systems sort of interact and morph into each other. A recent report came out that said that there are 226,000 Coloradan children with diagnoses of mental health, and we're only supporting about 21% of them. That puts us 48th in the country. That is not good enough for Colorado. We have ideas on how that can be done differently, and we're going to introduce you to the people who are changing that storyline. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us in the Stand in the Gap Facebook subgroup and learn how you can step in on behalf of children in profoundly new ways that makes our state even better. Thank you all so much.